Hey everyone, Jack here, back from the Arkansas High Country race where I completed the full loop this year. And I thought I would do a bike unpacking video for your benefit. So here we go. I'm gonna make this quick this year. Last year I kind of rambled on and I think the video was over an hour and a half long. So we'll just get right to it and get through this pretty quickly because I need to kind of move on with my life and get some of this stuff in the washing machine and cleaned up and get my bike, more importantly, serviced, because just about everything needs to be replaced at this point, I think, from a drivetrain perspective. So first of all, just a couple of stats. My official finish time was 7 days, 19 hours, 14 minutes, good enough for 7th place. And that included about 26 hours of stoppage time because I had a major tire failure on the rear end. I think it was, and I'm pretty certain it's been confirmed now, it's some sort of counterfeit tire that I bought at the last minute on Amazon. So don't do what I did and buy a last minute tire. Don't ever buy tires on Amazon. That was a huge mistake. I knew from the moment I had that thing on, my very first few seconds on it, that something was not right. So anyway, number of sleep hours, I estimate I slept around 28, 29 hours total. I took about 8 dirt and ditch naps in total. I slept on 3 or 4 post office floors where, I also used it to eat and to hide from the cold a little bit and rest and dress some wounds after a couple of bike crashes, nothing major. Got chased by at least 30 to 40 dogs this year. There were a lot of dogs up and around Hot Springs, coming down before Hot Springs National Park, and I don't know, for some reason the dogs were all out and they were all gunning for me this year, but no major incidents. I've kind of learned how to deal with dogs over time, and those methods proved to be successful once again. As I said, I crashed my bike a couple of times, nothing major. Actually, one of them was avoiding a dog, a Great Dane that was in the middle of a gravel trail that I couldn't see until I came down over the apex, and there he was. Threw plenty of pity parties for myself. Tried to keep it, to a minimum. I think only about 4 this year, as opposed to last year where I think I had several more. And then, finally, the most important part is I made a good 6 new friends, and these are friends that you definitely go through some adventure with, and you go through some adversarial conditions, and they wind up, because of the fact that you've shared in these difficult things, and you've done something very significant together, they become your best friends forever. So I'm super pumped about that and excited to have new friends to commiserate with and to hopefully do more crazy adventures with in the future. So anyway, let's get to the bike. Kind of got it set up in a little weird way. I've don't have much room down here, and I don't have much plain white space behind me, so I had to kind of prop it up here on a table, which I think is going to work just fine. So let's get started. First of all, my helmet, just a standard issue helmet with my outbound lighting headlight still attached. I use this headlight extensively. The outbound lighting system is excellent. Highly recommend it. It's made locally here in Chicago, and their customer support is fantastic. And the lights perform flawlessly. They have charge-through capacity, and you can you run the lights on the source battery, which is your battery pack, your external battery, until that runs out, and then it runs on its own battery source, and they run forever. So these are excellent lights, excellent light coverage, and everybody I recommend them to loves them equally as much. So can't speak highly enough of them. Yes, I do wear a standard heart rate monitor. I don't know why. I do like data, so it's interesting to kind of see your heart rate fluctuate, go up and down, and especially go down over time with fatigue, and then it kind of gives you some indicators on what you're doing right and what you might need to work on. Also, here are some disgusting arm warmers that I wore pretty much all the time. They were always on at least around my wrists, and if they weren't in the pulled up position, so these probably need to be thrown away. Onto the hydration pack. So I just use an awesome Rob Krar Ultra Running hydration pack. I've got 2 of these. These things are phenomenal. They're extremely light. I love the fact that there's so many pockets in the front. I know the Usui, hydration packs are all the rage for gravel racing and ultra racing, but they only have straps as far as I know, and they don't have the capacity, the load carrying capacity that all these pockets have in the front of the vest, which I just really appreciate. In the left pocket, I typically use that for my gloves. These are just regular cycling gloves, that Trek-based gloves that I used all the time. If those weren't on, I would have full finger gloves that I used at night. The temperature variance this year was about a 30-degree swing, with highs in the mid to upper 80s, maybe even touching 90, and then lows at night were in the low 50s and even getting into the low 40s. So it was quite a significant swing, and when you're doing, long stretches of 22, 23 hours a day riding and moving forward, it does get cold. So I wound up buying a couple of pair of gas station gloves just to kind of make it through, and kept buying things until I found something that worked, and they were all in the $10 range or whatever. So didn't break the bank, but got me through it. Also in the left pocket, just more trash. Right pocket, this is generally where I would keep my salt tabs. Something you want to keep an eye on when you're exerting in the heat of the day is your electrolytes. That can really catch you by surprise. So, I tend to take a lot more salt during the day, and also do electrolyte replacement with salt tabs if I'm not getting electrolytes through a Gatorade type drink or whatever. If I'm in between resupply for long stretches, which is very common on this route. And then inside, I've got the standard issue 2-liter hydration bladder that worked just fine. I should probably replace this at some point because it probably is, it is a single point of failure. I do have many extras, but for whatever reason, I just continue to use the one I've always been using. Inside the actual hydration, inside the vest rather, I did wind up buying some arm warmers, or some hand warmers and toe warmers, just to get through the night. One thing that caught me by surprise was how cold those nights were. And I had summer weight cycling shorts on that were actually vented in the crotch on top of it. So things got really cold below the waist. I had plenty of layers on top, but below the waist I really didn't have much. So I found that stuffing hand warmers up my shorts, just kind of over the quad area, really kind of helped keep me warm and get me through. The coldest parts of the night are generally between, I'd say, 4 and 7 a.m. Even after the sun comes up, it's still, it's still very cold at that point in time. So it's really only about 3 or 4 hours you have to really kind of hunker down against the cold and focus on keeping yourself comfortable. The rest of the evenings were pretty mild up to that point. In the back, we have a little zipper compartment. This is where I kept, I use Body Glide for her. It's got some additional emollients added to this to deal with friction. I only applied this maybe a couple of times, and I just did it from a preventative perspective. I did not need any additional saddle creams or any treatments whatsoever. I did apply, one of my favorite tricks is using tea tree oil, and I applied that when I felt that there might be a start of some type of saddle sores or just the little pimples that you get, and that tea tree oil, man, that really takes care of it kind of right away for me. I also carry my water filter. This is a Caden Be-Free water filter. It's kind of all the rage right now. Katadyn is how you pronounce it. And I've got the bladder it came with, and then the filter itself. I would keep this in my backpack to keep it, my hydration vest, to keep it handy. There are a couple times that I needed to stop and filter water from questionable sources, although most of the water running from, that is running in Arkansas is coming from water runoffs or things of that nature, and it's fine as long as you're not grabbing water from a stagnant pond where it's green and it's just sitting still. That's where you kind of run into problems. But I did need this quite a few times, and so I kept it handy and on my person at all times so I can I wouldn't have to undo everything on my pack to kind of get to it. I think that's it. Some more trash. That's basically it for the hydration vest. Front of the bike, like I said, I've got the outbound light set up for just riding all night. I don't have a dynamo hub on this. I found the outbound lights work just fine for me. I'm able to, you know, in the types of races I've done so far, I'm able to kind of stop every 2 days or so and give the 2 or 3 days at most and give most of my external battery packs a full charge. And I never really had any issues with running low on batteries. Up front, on top of my aero bars, I've got my standard Garmin 1040 solar computer, and it sort of lived up here all the time. I've also got a iPhone mount that's magnetic, made by F3. This is the case that goes with it. My phone is obviously in a different case now. And then on the left here, behind the handlebars, I've got a standard feed bag. This one's made by Ovea Negra, and I've already placed an order with Zach Smith from South City Stitchworks to get some custom feed bags made, and I'm super excited about that coming for before my next race. Within that feed bag, I've generally got a Ziploc bag that's got lots of candy in it. That's my primary source of fuel, is just candy of all sorts. I tend to prefer things like sweet tarts and Spree bottle caps, Mike and Ike, just stuff that has the most dense carbohydrate content I can find, that isn't chocolates or anything like that that's going to melt in the sun. Generally keep them in a Ziploc bag just so it's easy to kind of move in and out of the feed bag if I need to. If I'm driving my bike up and over a down tree, for example, and I've got to kind of position it in a weird way where it's tipped upside down, and then that actually did happen where a lot of my food kind of falls out on the trail. So the Ziploc bag kind of helps keep everything together. Moving on, this is a full custom bag setup by Zach Smith, who I mentioned at South City Stitchworks in St. Louis. He made my bags. He made me a frame bag last year for the bike I chose to ride on the South Loop last year. And this year for the full loop, I decided to bring my hardtail. This is a full ultra setup is what he calls it. We've got the full length top tube bag. We've got a zipper pouch here on the left of the top tube bag. And then we've got a frame bag that has a bladder pouch on the right side and then a map pouch on the left side. Just going through and kind of emptying what the contents are, sort of in this, and it's broken up in 3 separate compartments. There are dividers within the top tube bag. So in the top front is where I kept most of my personal items, my essentials. So I had headphones that I actually never used, my toothbrush and toothpaste, chapstick, which I used all the time. I did have some sunblock, which I did not use at all, and I really didn't get much of a sunburn, even though the sun was pretty intense. Bug spray, I did need to use this a few times. Sometimes you're pedaling so slow and going up a hill and the bugs just figure out where you are and that you're a captive audience for them, and they catch up to you and start annoying the crap out of you. I do have a little tiny vial that's like a 0.5 ml bottle of tea tree oil, very small. I did use that frequently, as I mentioned. And then what else do we have here? A pack of military gum. So this is you can get this stuff on Amazon. It's caffeine gum, basically. So chewing the gum motion keeps you awake by keeping your jaw going. And then you get a nice, I think it's 200 milligrams of caffeine or something like that. A decent dose. I think it's the same amount as if you were to take a caffeine pill. So you got to kind of be careful because that hits you like a freight train. And if you're going on 2 days without sleep, you can come down pretty hard off a caffeine high. So that's something you need to kind of keep an eye on, at least for me personally. In the middle here, I've got my Anchor charger. This is something that's new that I picked up for this particular race. I left the cables connected to it. Generally, I would charge 2 devices at once. This is a, I forget the wattage. I don't see it on here. I can't remember exactly what wattage this is, but it is, let's see, it says GAN prime. I'm not really sure what that means, but it's a heavy duty. It's got some weight to it, and I think the capacity on it is it will recharge a 20K battery in about 4.5 hours when plugged into a standard 110 outlet. So it's pretty efficient, and it would charge my phone very quickly and my Garmin very quickly as well. So I would just kind of leave the cords plugged in and have it ready to go whenever I need it. And left it in the top tube bag. It's kind of awkward. It didn't, I moved it around several times on the bike. I couldn't really find a good spot for it. And I found that when I needed to reach it for it, I didn't want to take everything apart, so I left it in the top tube bag, and it seemed to be a good place for it. What I also have is this was a good idea. It's called a Gerber Dime, and it's a small plier type multi-tool that was really great. It just opens up into a set of pliers. It's also got a set of scissors. It's got screwdrivers. It's got blades. It's got all kinds of things. A can opener, all sorts of stuff. What you find is, or at least I find, is that your hands kind of stop working at some point in these ultra distance races. It could be a combination of cold. It could be just the fatigue on your hands. It could be whatever it is, but I find that the use of my hands, the dexterity and the strength in my hands would come and go. And then if there are situations where you're dealing with a mechanical or a flat or something like that, you're definitely going to need some help if your hands just happen to be not working so well at that time. So this is an excellent little tool. It does have a little bit of weight to it, but I think I saw this recommended on bikepacking.com and picked one up, and it's only a handful of bucks, and I did use it quite frequently, so I do recommend something like this to carry along in addition to your bike-specific tools. Other things in the middle pocket compartment, I've got my glasses container, and what I wound up doing is I destroyed 2 pairs of sunnies. They just fell apart and disintegrated. The first one I sprayed with by accident. I sprayed with bug spray, and it just delaminated the glue and screwed up the lenses, and they've basically disintegrated and melted. The second set I bought from a gas station, and it was like $7, so they lasted about 2 days before they broke. And I just wound up wearing a set of clear lens glasses that I got from Gooder a couple of years ago, and I would wear these at night and then continue to wear them through the day, and these actually were great. They're flat, which I really like, because the big fancy cycling glasses that make you look super cool, that are mirrored and everything, usually have a massive curvature to the front. And the problem is that, it takes a large glasses case to keep them protected, and that's not something you want to deal with. It would take up an enormous amount of space on your bike. So I'm always kind of searching for a low profile, sort of flatter lens style sunglass that would pack up nicely on these bikes, and I really haven't come up with a good solution. So if anybody's got a good solution, be sure to let me know. But these Gooders worked really good for nighttime. I also wound up buying another roll of electrical tape. I went through all the tape that I had brought with me wrapped around my seat post when I was trying to deal with that flat tire. I burned through 2 tubes, and I eventually, on the second tube, the hole was so big you could see the tube through it. And I was using a TPU tube, so it was orange, and you could see the tube right through the tire. And I didn't think stitching it was even going to help at all, so I used Gorilla Tape and just wrapped all the Gorilla Tape I had around the tire and around the rim, and that lasted for a little while. It got me probably another 15 miles down the road before it eventually failed. So because I used all the tape, I did wind up picking up an extra roll of electrical tape, because things kind of come unwrapped, and you fall on your bike and stuff starts kind of unwinding and in general just kind of wearing out over the course of a 1,000-mile race, which is a long period of time. So the tape just kind of helps you kind of seal things back up that are kind of falling apart. And then finally in the rear compartment, I do have my my ibuprofen back here just in case I need it for inflammation and things of that nature. But primarily in this back pocket, I've got my battery packs. So I have 3 external batteries. They are a Nightcore Carbo 20,000. This is my primary pack that is usually connected to the front headlight. And then I have 2 Nightcore 10,000s, Gen 2s, and they work fantastic. I use these for, they're light enough you can carry them into a convenience store or, a restaurant with you and do a little charging of your phone or your Garmin while you're inside eating your one meal for the day at the one restaurant that you would come across all day. And I really enjoy these Nightcores. They're light, they're heavy duty, they get good reviews, and they charge pretty quickly, and they're dependable. So that's my source of power right there. Let's see if we got anything else in the top 2 bag. I do have a cache of, looks like now it's partially dust, but a cache of caffeine pills as well, in addition to the caffeine gum. All right, moving on to the right side of my South City Stitchworks full frame bag. Here's my gas station gloves. These were $9.99. They've got some rubberized fingertips, which were nice for those cold days. Yeah, I just didn't bring appropriate cycling gloves. I didn't think it was going to be that cold at night, and it was. The only problem with these are they're obviously not made for cycling, so they would get wet on the inside. And once you get wet gloves, it kind of makes things a little even more unpleasant than they were before. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned, the gloves were, those really cold periods at night were really only about maybe 2 to 3 hours at the latest hours of the night and in the earliest hours of the morning after the sunrise, and that's usually the coldest period. So once you got through that, it would start warming up pretty quickly, at least this year. What else do we have? Okay. Anytime I would stop for resupply, I would get almost 2 of everything, whether or not I was, so I would consume 1 and then bring 1 with me. I almost always had a 16-ounce can of Coke. At one point, I did have a 16-ounce, I think it was, Red Bull. But I really far prefer the Coke. I've seen more often than not, I think I talked about this in my video last year, Coke has some kind of magical, mystical powers. I don't know what it is, but I've seen it pull athletes out of doom and despair and really, really dark times more often than not. I think it's just a combination of caffeine and sugar or whatever it is, but it freaking works. And so I always had a spare can of Coke in the frame bag. And the positive is that you would buy these, they'd obviously come right out of the cooler, and they'd be cold for a little while. So when you rest it on top of your hydration bladder, which I have inside here that we'll get to in a second, it provides a little more cooling a little bit longer for the water that's in your hydration bladder. So it can cool down a lukewarm source of water for you and make it a little more enjoyable. Usually up here in the upper corner, I would also, along that same vein, I would buy 2 sandwiches. Usually if it came from a gas station or a McDonald's breakfast sandwich or even a Subway, I would get 2. I would eat 1 and then I would shove 1 up in the corner of this frame bag. And sometimes it sat there for 24 hours. But boy, I tell you, when I needed to eat that sandwich, that was the best possible freaking idea I ever came up with, is having that spare sandwich on board. And I had that spare sandwich on board just about the entire race. and I think it really helped me on the final day. On the final day, I pushed overnight and slept about 10 minutes total, and I was able to continue on that next day and do 2 more mountain climbs before descending toward the finish line, just based on the fact that I had a 1,000-calorie McDonald's breakfast sandwich from the day before in my frame bag that I was able to eat at 5:30 in the morning, and it was enough power it was enough energy to fuel to get me through all the way to the finish line. So those kinds of things, thinking ahead, like where you're gonna eat, especially if you're gonna do a 24 or 48 hour push, you really got to kind of think ahead about what you're gonna need. And one of the guys I was racing, I think, didn't have that spare food, and I think that's that caused him to have to rest more, and I was able to kind of snag that position from him. And there it is. There's the wrapper from my last McDonald's breakfast sandwich. This is a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit, and I think it's right around 900 and some calories. So other than the actual, so this is an Epidura 3 liter, which I doubt it's 3 actual liters. It seems smaller than that, but it's an Epidura 3 liter frame bladder, shaped like a frame bag, so it's perfect. This is the 2nd year I've used this. It's awesome. I just love these things. You can use it for water. This year I primarily used it for water, but you can put whatever you want in it, and it's just fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. And then over on the other side, which you can't see, but we'll go through it pretty quickly, is really your map pocket. So I had my, and I don't have it in here because I was referencing it earlier, but I had my cue sheet, which had all my stops listed on it and the mileage associated with those stops, and also what those stops had as far as potential things that you need. So whether there was a 24-hour gas station or a McDonald's or a Dollar General. It is Arkansas after all, and there's Dollar Generals just about everywhere, and you just wind up being in a lot of situations where you have to rely on Dollar General for your dinner. And so that listed, the exact mile markers where everything was, and generally their hours of operation and even their phone numbers, which I did have to reference multiple times. The other things we also put on the cue sheet was also the selfie stops. So there are required selfie stops where you have to take selfies to prove you were actually at that spot in the route, because it's nearly impossible to figure out the breadcrumbs of where everybody went over the course of a route that long. So that was also printed on the cue sheet. And then I've got another Ziploc bag with this. This was one of the most important things, and I can't recommend it enough. And I'm generally really bad about doing bike maintenance while in the middle of a race, but with the conditions this year and the dryness in Arkansas, you had to maintain your chain, and it became extremely important, and your drive chain. So every morning, or nearly every time I stopped for an extended period of time, I would completely clean my drivetrain, and I would clean the crap off of my cassette and my chainring and my derailleur, just knocking off, and the jockey pulleys as well. Just knocking off the buildup on those things would get you, and then of course reapplying oil would get you shifting much better and help your drivetrain stay happy and healthy. So I did bring a little microfiber cloth along with me to help do that, and shoved it in another plastic Ziploc bag, and that worked perfectly. Let's see what else we got in here. So this is my personal items wallet, if you will. It's just a Lysine caddy sack. It is 100% waterproof. I saw somebody recommend this years ago, and I picked up a couple of them. I think this is the larger size of the two. So this has my, my daily medications, it's got some sleep gummies if you have a hard time falling asleep, your earplugs. I brought some Voltaren for aches and pains. I've got some eye drops, some Sustain eye drops to help your irritated eyes, which happens over time. Your eyes get more and more crabby. I do have a little bit of chamois cream in here that I wound up not using at all. And then I would have my my credit cards and my cash in here as well, and various other personal items that I could just carry this into a convenience store, and that's all I brought. So this works really well, and keeping it on sort of the left side of your frame bag so it's handy is something that that was very convenient for me. Let's see what else we got in here. Oh yeah, so I've got a cache of zip ties. I didn't really need any. I saw a couple writers that could have used some, but they refused to take my offer, unfortunately. Yeah, and I've also got an ice sock in here. I've got two of them actually. We were afraid that the temperatures were going to be so hot that we would need something like this to stuff ice down inside the sock and then shove that down your jersey or up your legs or wherever you might need it, or in your abdomen, and just let it slowly melt. They take almost no space, so I had these kind of crammed into the corners of my frame bag, but didn't wind up using either of them. I'm glad I had them. Let's see what else. I've got a tubeless sealant in here, which I've got kind of set up with a little Stan's 2-ounce bottle that's got the applicator. I keep this empty, but this is the bottle I use to shoot sealant in through a removed valve core. So it makes it super simple. You don't have to have any other hoses or anything with you. And then I just bring some additional sealant in these 1-ounce, I think they're 1-ounce containers you can get on Amazon. I just pour sealant in here, and I had a couple of these on me. And then the applicator, the empty stands that I would use that I could use to shoot sealant into the wheel. And then also this little tiny funnel to kind of pour it into the actual stands applicator. So this was sort of my sealant, my tubeless tire setup maintenance kit, and I kept that in the left side of my frame bag, sort of down in the corners where, you know, it's awkward to get stuff down there anyway. So you put the things you're never going to really reach for, or you hope you never will need, down in those corners, and they stay there, and it kind of stays out of the way of the rest of your stuff. All right. So speaking of the get this out of the way. Speaking of the scarcity of food and or water on this route, one of the things I did right away was I bought a full canister of peanut butter, and I stuck it in my down tube spare bottle cage. And I carried this thing around. I got this early on in the race on day one. I carried this thing around and pushed it up every single hill, and I wound up using it. I needed it for dinner. I got to Eureka Springs at around 2 in the morning, and I did need a hotel because I had to charge some devices for a couple of hours. And I had half sleeve of Oreo cookies from the Whit Springs Community Center that I still had left. And then I had this peanut butter. So I literally dipped Oreos in the peanut butter, and that was my dinner. And, you know, you've got to kind of think about things like, if your bike breaks and you're 24 hours from getting out, or whatever it is, or your rescue, or however you're going to get yourself out of that situation, what does your food look like? Like, can you sustain yourself? Can you sustain your own life? And I brought a canister of peanut butter to do that, and I did wind up needing it. So, you know, I recommend kind of thinking ahead of what you might need in those desperate situations. The bag I took off is a Bedrock roll top bag. This is where all my tools are. I did wind up using this frequently. I crashed my bike trying to avoid running into a dog, and I crashed my bike one other time that I don't even remember why or how I crashed or what the situation was. But I carry a Wolf Tooth 8-bit tool system, which has got everything, including bits, a driver, it's got a chain breaker, It's got tire levers. It's got everything. I'm not sure I totally love this. It's a little bit awkward. It's a little heavy. The bits can fall out on the ground, and all of those things happened. But it was the kind of single multi-tool that I needed for this entire trip. I would use this in GAN probably at this distance or longer. But anything shorter, I think I would take more of a standard foldable multi-tool setup. I also have Dumont Tech D loop for the chain, and I use this frequently. This is really good stuff for extremely dry conditions. A little goes a long way, and I love it. So this worked well for me. I also have in this toolkit a box. This is a standard patch kit box, and within here I've got all kinds of things like rubber cement. I've got valve core removers. I've got spare valves, tubeless valves. I've got a couple little tubes of crazy glue. I've got spare brake pads. I have spare nuts and bolts for various things on the bike. I have spares associated with the tail fin, rear rack, things that can break or fall off that are single points of failure. I have needle and threads. I have a Schrader valve adapter. I have spare quick links for the SRAM chain and all sorts of stuff. So kind of packs away nicely in this nice little plastic box. I can keep everything together that way. Just wrap a couple rubber bands around it. Rubber bands always come in handy too at some point during these races, so that was also in my toolkit. I also have another set of, I don't know why I brought those, another set of tire levers. These tires come off so easy you can get them off with your hands. I've got a Dynaplug kit, a Dynaplug tool. I carry a couple of these. Also in that little box is a bunch of spare Dynaplugs. I would carry one, I'm surprised I didn't see it, it's in here somewhere. Here it is. I would carry one in my top tube bag, here's one, and then I had the other in the toolkit as well. So I had a bunch of Dynaplugs just in case I needed them. I also had a little, this is my friend Zeno's idea, bring an actual set of Allen keys of the ones that you use a lot. Sometimes those multi-tools have weird angles on them and it's hard to like get into certain spots, so I bring these along with me. And I did use them. I've got standard CO2 and a CO2 valve. And I have a spare derailleur hanger for this particular bike. And I think that's it as far as tools are concerned. All right, let's move on. So I also would attach on the seat post an Epidura collapsible backpack. These things are awesome. This thing opens up into like 18 liters or something like that. I'm not going to open it because it's nicely put away, but essentially it folds into its own pocket and opens up into a full backpack. And you can use these if you need to hit a resupply and buy a bunch of stuff that you can't find places for on your bike. So this comes in extremely handy, and it folds down into a nice little package, and you can put it anywhere you want. On the actual tail fin aero pack setup, which I have here, I would store extra layers right on top, mostly because they needed to dry. Everything would get wet at night, and I would dry them through the day. So this is a gilet or a vest that I borrowed from Johnny at Jackalope Cycling at the last minute. He's going to kill me because he said this is like one of 5 in existence, and I pretty much ended its life, I think. So yeah, so I need to watch that and see if I can save it. But chances are it's probably not savable. And then the rest of my kit within the aero pack consists of and some of this is still wet, a shelf. This is basically a windproof shell that's my friend Dave Rich loaned me, and I use this constantly. and it's still actually attached to my Gore Shake Dry rain jacket. And so I would use this as my layering system. I'd use the vest over my lightweight jersey, then my Gore Shake Dry, and then an outer shell. And that was it. That's all I had for temperatures getting down into the mid 40s. And it was good enough. It was good enough. I needed something else for the lower layer. If I were to do it again, I'd probably bring a puffy and then maybe one rain jacket, but I was happy with the way this worked out. And then I've just got a regular dry bag that's got some additional clothing in it. This is like the camp clothes, basically. I have a pair of shorts. This pair of shorts is way too big. I'm gonna have to find something that packs down a lot smaller for next year. I use those only once or so. I mostly just stayed in my kit like most people do. I have an extra set of bibs. I don't know why I brought these. Most people at this distance just race in what they wear, and that's it. They just have one kit. These are new. This is a new bib for me, new to me. So I was a little nervous. I didn't have a whole lot of time in these bibs, and I wanted to make sure that that they were going to be okay. So I actually wore the shorts version of this, and these are ASOS. I wore the shorts version, and then this is the bib version. And around day 3 or 4, I switched over to the clean bib version, and I should have never done that. They were uncomfortable from the beginning. I immediately, I went through the day, got through the day, and I switched back to my nasty shorts that had only been washed out once. I didn't even clean them before I did, and those things for some reason are just incredible. I loved them. I put them on dirty again, and I rode those for the rest of the race, and had no issues whatsoever. And those are the ASOS G2 something or other shorts. They only make like 1 or 2 shorts, and I just absolutely love them. I came home and I bought another pair immediately. Let's see, I did have what just fell out as a spare pair of socks that I did not wind up using. I have an emergency sleeping bag. This was basically my sleeping bag, which is nothing more than a Mylar blanket that's kind of stitched together. I have my Nemo Tensor insulated sleeping pad that I did use several times when I would bivvy. And I have my actual bivvy, which is an Outdoor Research helium. And I used that several times. And what else do we have in here? I have my nasty jersey that I wore for many, many, many days. All this needs to be washed as soon as possible. I also have an additional water bladder that I did wind up using. It's a Hydropack 2-liter Seeker. And the cool thing about this, and I think my friend Zeno also taught me this trick, is the bladder itself can accept the, whatever it is, the water filter that threads onto, I don't even see it in the pile, but the water filter it's got the same thread pitch as the water filter, the Be-Free. So the Be-Free will fit inside this, and so that becomes your contingency plan in case the Be-Free bladder breaks for whatever reason, or it gives you another capacity for carrying water. Let's see what else. Coming to the end here, I've got a pump. I did have a pump, and then that pump failed when I was trying to get my tire repaired. I basically wore out the seal on the inside, so I had to get another pump, and this is just the replacement pump. I did use it just to adjust tire pressure here and there. I have basically some tubes that I had to pick up as replacement tubes. They're just standard rubber tubes. And then I have a cache of emergency, which I never needed, emergency carbs. So I think this bag is around 500 grams of carbs or something like that. Maybe it's even more. I've got each compartment individually labeled. It's a combination of gels, candies, and powders. I carried this exact thing last year and didn't need it. I carried it again this year and didn't need it. And I've carried it in other races and didn't need it. But it's always better to be safe than sorry and have those additional carbs you might need to get you through if for whatever reason things are closed that you anticipate that are open, and so on and so forth. So that is about it. I think I've got a couple more. I've got a couple little Ziploc bags I've got a Ziploc bag of first aid stuff. I did wind up using quite a bit because I cut up my knee pretty good. And then I've got wet wipes in individual Ziploc bags. So there you go. That is what I brought for the 2024 version of the Arkansas High Country Race, the full loop. I think my total mileage was around 1020, so 1,020 miles with somewhere around 82,000 feet of elevation gain is what I think my Garmin recorded. I think the official race stats is somewhere around 74,000 feet elevation gain or whatever, but I wound up taking some diversions and doing some additional climbing just based on places that I was trying to get and so on and so forth. So there you go. It was a successful year. I want to thank Chuck and Johnny for putting on just a fantastic race once again. Jackalope Cycling, the Arkansas High Country race organizers, and everybody who's involved with that race. It's just an absolutely phenomenal experience. I can't recommend it highly enough. Yeah, go on the web, there's a Facebook group, there's Facebook pages, there's a web page that shows all the results in the last several years. It is an absolutely incredible route, and I can't wait to do it again next year. So that's it for now. Peace out, and we'll see you next year.